Welcome to the University of Ontario Debate Society Introduction to Debate series. We're now going to move on to the third module, Principles of Disagreement and Argumentation. In the previous module, we talked about an introduction to motions without having any conception of how to debate, so you understand what these topics that you're going to be discussing are and how to work around them. Now we're going to start talking about the top level understanding of debating and what is the theory behind the actions that you are going to be taking and what you should always keep in mind while debating. So, argument dimensions, truth, and importance. Generally speaking, people get into disagreements regarding either the truth and the importance of claims. Just think about a time when you got into an argument with a friend or family member. You maybe were saying, oh, what they said was not true regarding this topic. Or maybe you do agree with them. Maybe you think that your dad did have a point when they punished you, but it was less about whether it was it was rather whether it was a deserved punishment, but whether it was a good punishment or had good outcomes on you, and whether that's part of it specifically fair. So, all in all, you will always have two dimensions of an argument, two components, either truthness and importance. Truthness refers to the extent that a certain argument is believable, as in whether this would actually happen in the real world, while importance refers to the extent a certain argument actually matters, as in what do people care about and to what extent do we care about this specific thing or this outcome more than we care about other things. This means that, in short, to win a debate, you would want your arguments to be both true and important, while you'd also want to prove that the other side's arguments are untrue and unimportant. This diagram, created by our previous VP training, Tyler Lee, is a great way to illustrate the importance of the truth to importance diagram, or the truth to importance conception of argumentation. In this, we have two axes. One, the axis of truthness, and two, the axis of importance. You can now imagine that any single argument that you would make would fall in this specific chart, that it would be somewhere in this realm, whether it locates up here or down here. The example motion that we use for this specific diagram and representation is this house would ban zoos. So let's assess these different arguments and explain why they fall into these different points of the chart. Banning zoos is pretty cool, is a red dot and is located as pretty untruthful and pretty unimportant because it is not proven to be true that banning zoos is pretty cool, nor is it clear why is this important, that banning zoos is pretty cool as a reason why we should ban them. So for that reason, it makes a very weak argument in both dimensions. Second, we have banning zoos will solve all animal cruelty. As you could see, that would probably be a pretty important outcome. If we were able to solve all animal cruelty, I'm sure a lot of people would agree that that's a very important thing to happen. The problem is that there is no illustration or explanation or any type of analysis that seeks to explain why is it that banning zoos will result in solving all animal cruelty. And evidently, just an intuition check would probably, in your own gut, lead you to believe that it is quite improbable that banning zoos is going to solve all animal cruelty, given that animal cruelty is caused by all sorts of things and not just zoos, if it is even caused by zoos. Thirdly, we have banning zoos will result in animals being removed from zoos. Now, this is a pretty self-evident truth, and it's pretty connected to the motion, right? The motion is saying this house would ban zoos. It is pretty clear that banning zoos would result in the displacement of animals from these zoos, or at least that's a pretty highly likely outcome as a consequence of banning zoos. The problem is, as you might already notice, is that it's very unclear why is this important. What is the implications of this argument, and why should anyone care that animals being removed from zoos is a good thing? So because of this reason, this argument might be true, but it is not necessarily important. The final one, banning zoos will stop animal suffering caused by required performances and small spaces, is both a true and important argument. You are able to prove the truth of this argument by explaining how animal suffering is caused by required performances. So, for example, orcas performing in marine land, and small spaces, like, for example, a lion being caged. And so the animal suffering that is caused by this will cease to exist the moment that you ban zoos. Now, is this a fully fleshed out good argument to the maximum it could be? No. But is it sufficiently better in proving truthness and importance than any of these other claims? Yes. You could also apply the lessons you learn about the truth to importance diagram to any type of essay you ever write or any other argument that you need to make, because these are the most important facets or the facets of making an argument. So understanding them will definitely give you an edge. I highly implore you to try to apply this in any context you can. In my experience, it's helped me a lot to start to conceptualize arguments in this manner. Now we're going to do a short activity. So as with previous activities, I'm going to post up the activity and explain the instruction. Then after that, I'll give you time to pause, assuming that you're interested in pausing. And after you could reflect based on the answer, or you could just try doing it yourself, assuming that there is no answer on the board. So in this instance, we have the claim we should ban homework. Try to make an example argument, a simple argument using one, the truth aspect. So ask yourself, why is this claim true? And two, the importance aspect. Explain why your claim is important. I'll give you 10 seconds. All right, so we have the claim why we should ban homework. So what is an argument that we could defend this topic? We could say that homework is stressful and that's why we should ban homework. We just got this by asking ourselves the question, why? Now, to build out this argument, we're going to first ask ourselves, why is this true? Firstly, you often get penalized for not completing homework, which then incurs you stress because then you might feel like you're doing something wrong or you are behind. Secondly, you get it for so many courses and they do not normally coordinate the load, i.e. teachers may act independently in a lot of instances, or they're just naturally make occur that there will be times of high homework load. This is stressful because if there's too much homework to do, then you might not have enough time in the day to do it. And given that you are required to complete your homework, maybe for a grade or something like that, this will also incur stress. And thirdly, you will need to do it while balancing other things like extracurriculars, which again adds another dimension to the idea that you simply might just not have enough time to complete homework, even though for a lot of instances, it is necessary for you to get grades. So then why is it important then that it is, now that we know that homework is stressful, we kind of prove this idea, why does this argument matter? One, stress can affect things like sleep and health, etc., which are generally things that most people would agree as bad because they affect your health and well-being. Secondly, if students are too stressed, they may also perform worse in school, which then counteracts the goals of education, because if the goal of a school is to ensure that students are learning and progressing as quickly and as efficiently as possible, then maybe homework being stressful acts against the school. Now we've proven by explaining why this is true and why this is important that homework is stressful, which is an argument that we have in support for banning homework. Now we have our second claim, college should be free for everyone. I'll give you 10 seconds again. All right, an example argument. Ask yourself why. Why should college be free for everyone? People need education is going to be your claim here. So why is this claim true? One, job requirements have went up over time as the labor force has increasingly got more educated, which has made it that education is now a prerequisite to getting some level of financial security. And then why is this important that people need education? Because right now, in the current context, some people do not have enough money to afford education. And because of this reason, it makes it incredibly important for people to have access to it. And that is why college should be free for everyone. Again, now you could see that you could have a lot of depth in arguments by adding a lot of reasons as to why something is true and why something is important. You could have it be more simple. The goal is to have more reasons as long as they're all good reasons. But this is the very simple, higher thinking way of making an argument. You have your claim, you explain why is your claim true, You explain why it's important. That is a simple argument. All right. The second idea we're going to talk about in terms of broader theory of argumentation and debate is comparisons, which we largely say is a crux of debating. Here's a very uncontroversial thought. Every single action has a conceivable or possible alternative. For instance, if I had a topic about banning phones, a conceivable alternative would be to not ban phones. And there's probably a lot of stuff in between, like, for example, just regulating phones or creating a certain quota as to how many phones people could have, etc. The implication of this uncontroversial thought is that one cannot prove something is best unless it is meaningfully better than alternatives, which again, not very controversial. Think about when you're in a line trying to decide what type of food you want to get. You are not just deciding a food because you think one is bad and one is good. You are probably looking through the menu and trying to decide based on preference how one item is meaningfully better than all the other alternatives, because you have to cross out all the other options from the menu in order to choose one of those options to be the one that you order for whatever reasons you select. The best example to demonstrate this idea as to why comparisons then are really important in debate is with the motion, "This House prefers capitalism to communism." In this motion, it clearly outlines the comparison. Government is going to be defending preferring capitalism to communism, so you'd rather have this type of system of economics. Meanwhile, communism is defended on opposition as preferable to capitalism. In this motion, it would be insufficient for government to just explain that capitalism is good. Rather, they need to engage with the given alternative of communism and explain why capitalism is at least preferable to communism by explaining why communism is then relatively worse to capitalism. So basically, all I'm saying is that government can't come up here and just say capitalism is good without saying communism is bad to win. They have to do both of those things. The conclusion of the need for comparisons is that in each debate, it is necessary to identify what the other side is defending. This is otherwise known as the comparative. It's a very relative term and a term that you will see flagged around a lot in debating, where someone will mention the comparative. So again, if I'm on government, the comparative of my side would be the opposition. This is what the other side is defending. If I'm on opposition, the comparative or the alternative would be the government side and what they are defending. It is relative to the position you have, and it is always the opposite side that is defending the comparative to you. You need to tailor your argumentation towards why your side is good, why their side, which is the comparative, the alternative to your side, is bad, and then why your side then is relatively better than theirs. So we're now going to do an activity to identify these comparisons. This is a tough idea for a lot of debaters to grasp right at the get-go. I just want to plant the seeds of this idea of comparisons into your minds right off the bat, because as you begin to debate, you will continue and you'll proceed to understand why comparisons are so important. And I'm sure that a lot of these thoughts are going to connect very quickly. I think that if you're still confused, though, this activity should definitely clarify a lot of the things. So firstly, this house opposes the idealization of parenthood. Identify what government and opposition have to defend. I'll give you 10 seconds. All right. So government's defending the counterfactual. And remember, we learned a lot of these different terms in the motion module. So make sure that if you are confused or you did not watch the motion module, understand these terms like the counterfactual, countermodel, etc., because they are definitely relevant to helping you identify what each side has to defend. So government's defending the counterfactual, which is a world without the idealization of parenthood. So some kind of alternative probably exists when we don't have the idealization of parenthood. Opposition is defending status quo, which is right now a world where the idealization of parenthood. So the world as is, because right now you're presumably assuming because on government you're opposing this idealization that right now there is some kind of idealization of parenthood on opposition or in the status quo. Now we have this House would impose gender and racial quotas in government cabinets. All right. Government's defending a world with the policy implemented. So they're defending a world where we do impose gender and racial quotas in government cabinets. Meanwhile, opposition's defending status quo or the use of a counter model, which again is a type of alternative that you have at your disposal, specifically and only in this House win motions. In some contexts, you could use it in actor motion policy bucket. But this House in policy motions is where broadly this is applicable. So in opposition, you're either defending the status quo, which is still an alternative to a world with a policy implemented, or a counter model, which is a proposed alternative. Now, this House prefers expositional storytelling fiction as opposed to interpretive. All right. Government's defending expositional storytelling in fiction, and after that, opposition is defending interpretive storytelling in fiction. Note how this motion is very unique, that in this case, both sides are defending something absolute and are not defending status quo. You're basically picking one type of storytelling as preferable to the other, and both sides have to defend it. That's okay, as long as you're able to identify what both sides are defending, it still works out for the better. Lastly, this House believes that international sporting events should remain depoliticized. So in this case, government's defending the counterfactual, a world where international sports are depoliticized. The main reason why is because in our current instance, it's not fully depoliticized. Or if it is, then opposition will be the one that is defending the counterfactual, because that means that they're defending the world as is. Again, you just have to figure out who's defending the world as is and who's defending the change. If the change is sporting events becoming depoliticized, then government's the one defending counterfactual. Opposition defends status quo, a world where there can be politicization in international sports, which means that there is options to do so. And again, if the status quo is actually the other side, that's okay. That means the counterfactual would be opposition. So overall, we talked about the different aspects of importance in terms of making arguments and broad, high level understanding of debate, which is one, you need to understand that there is a truth and important axis of arguments, and at the very, very bare minimum, you should seek to build your arguments around the questions of why is it true and why is it important. But secondly, we clearly have identified that that's not the only thing that's important, but making comparisons between both sides or alternatives is a really important facet of debate. That you can't just explain why your side is good, you need to explain why their side is bad and why your side is relatively better, which means comparisons are kind of the third axis that's incredibly important for debating and to ensure that you create good arguments and have good engagement with the other side. That is everything for this module.